All right, in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about cell growth, cell division, and reproduction. So there are things that limit how big cells can get. Uh, the larger the cell becomes, the less efficient it is moving materials in and out through the cell membrane. So that's one thing. Also, the amount of DNA doesn't change as the cell gets bigger. So there's more demand on the DNA to make more proteins and things to keep the cell functioning properly. And one of the biggest things is the surface to volume ratio. So surface area is the amount of covering of an object. It's the outside part of the cell in this case. Volume is all the stuff, matter inside that makes up the object, in this case, the cell we're talking about. So to determine the surface area of a cube, you take the length times the width and you multiply that by 6 because there's 6 faces to a cube. The volume of a cube is length times width times height. So if you have a 1 by 1 by 1 centimeter cube, the surface area is going to be 6 square meters. The volume is 1 cubic centimeter. So the surface area to volume ratio would be 6 to 1 in this case. As cells get bigger, like a 2 by 2 by 2 or a 3 by 3 by 3, the surface area doesn't grow as fast as the volume does. So you can see in the 2 by 2 you've got 24 to 8, which is basically a 3 to 1 ratio. And then 54 to 27, again, a little bit less. So here's the surface to volume ratios for the 3 cubes we talked about. You can see it goes from a 6 to 1 to 3 to 1 to 2 to 1. So the amount of surface area, the stuff that gets things in and out of the cell, is not increasing as fast as the stuff inside the cell. So again, we talked about DNA. The amount of DNA doesn't change, so as the cell gets bigger, it needs more proteins and things, and it puts too much demand on the DNA. Talked about the volume growing relatively fast compared to the surface area. So the area to exchange materials, nutrients in, waste products out, is insufficient at some point, and that's what limits how big the cell can get. So how does the cell deal with this? Well, it deals with it by dividing, basically. So in cell division, you get 2 daughter cells. One cell divides into 2. Now, the kind of cell division depends on what kind of cell you're talking about. If we're talking about prokaryotes, they do something called binary fission. They take the one circular chromosome that they have, they copy it, and the cell simply splits in 2. In eukaryotes, because they have a nucleus and they have linear chromosomes, the process is more complicated. It's called mitosis. We'll talk more about that later. So the first thing the cell has to do is each new cell needs a full set of DNA, so the cell is going to copy its DNA. By dividing, by making the volume less, the cell keeps the surface to volume ratio high and is able to continue to move the required amount of materials in and out to support the cell. So there's 2 kinds of reproduction we're going to talk about in cell division. We're going to talk about asexual reproduction. Remember, A means without or not, and sexual reproduction. So asexual reproduction is used primarily for growth, for repairs after an injury, and for making new cells for some organisms. And asexual reproduction involves one parent produces genetically identical offspring. Clones, basically. So this type of reproduction doesn't produce a lot of variability. The only variability comes up when there's a mistake in copying the DNA and a mutation happens. Sexual reproduction involves the fusion of 2 separate parent cells or gametes, one male, one female, sperm and egg. Because you have 2 different parents contributing, the offspring have genetic information from each parent. They're not identical to either parent. You get more variability, which is good for survival and changing environments and things like that. So look at the comparison. Asexual produces many offspring in a short period, don't need to find a mate. In stable environments, it works pretty good. But if conditions change, offspring are not going to be well adapted. They're going to lose out in that environment probably. Sexual reproduction, fewer offspring, growth takes more time. They got to find a mate. But they provide genetic diversity, and offspring will more than likely be able to adapt to changing environment.